political analyst and New York Times national political reporter, Ested Herndon. First of all, let's talk about the sit-down interview. Scott, it's the first time the vice president is going to be sitting down for an interview. She's doing it with her vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz. Do you think that blunts attacks from Republicans, or is the line now going to be, well, why isn't she doing it by herself?
Yeah, I do think people are going to bring that up. Look, I have great confidence in Dana and CNN to do this. I think it's incredibly weak sauce to show up with your running mate. The fact that they don't have enough confidence in her to let her sit herself, the actual top of the ticket, and do a single interview. In fact, I think the hand-wringing and the gyrations over this over the last month show a troubling lack of confidence in her political ability, which also makes you wonder as a voter, well, what kind of president would you be if this kind of a small-time decision, can we do an interview or not, what does that look like for your decision-making process, so on? So, yes, I think Republicans are going to think it's pretty weak to show up with effectively someone to take up half the time.
Maria, why not do it solo?
Scott's assertions are just incredibly weak, speaking about weak, and just not true. But look, Republicans are going to continue to try to throw everything at her because nothing has stuck. And she will do interviews by herself, Anderson. Let's remember that she is the nominee for all of maybe a month and some days. And so this compressed time frame, I think doing an interview with her alongside her vice presidential nominee is going to give voters the chance that they want, I believe, to not just listen to her, but to listen to the vice presidential nominee. And what will they do as a team? I think that this is going to be a great forum for the vice president and for her nominee for vice president to be able to continue to talk about what they're going to do for middle-class voters, working-class voters, making sure that they understand that their history, the vice president's history and Tim Walz's history, mirrors theirs. They grew up in middle-class, working-class environments. Everything that they're going to do is going to be fighting for them, in contrast to somebody like Donald Trump, who has never done anything in his life that is not self-serving or for himself. And I think that Dana is going to focus on questions that will let them bring that out.
Wow. So Kamala Harris can't even handle an interview on her own. Seriously? She has to team up with her running mate, Tim Walz, for a sit-down interview with CNN. I mean, come on, man. This just screams incompetence. It's like she's hiding from the tough question the American people want answers to, especially about this terrible economy. Like under the Biden-Harris administration, it's been tough. I mean, Dana Bash is moderating, but now they're splitting the time between Harris and Walz. This isn't about like transparency right now. It's a tactic to avoid giving Harris the floor for too long. That's pretty much what they're trying to do right now. So she doesn't have to actually explain herself or her policy in any real depth. And don't even get me started like on this whole debate mic fiasco. Like they trying to pressure Trump into agreeing to keep the mic on, hoping for a gotcha moment. Like that's pretty much what they're doing right now, and they don't want to commit. They just want to play around and try to get under Trump's skin. It's just another ploy to make her look good. But here's the deal: Trump should stick to the original debate rules, like the one agreed upon when Biden was still in the race. That was the same thing that Kamala Harris said also, that she will only do the September 10th interview on ABC. This is what they agreed on, because after that, Trump proposed 3 more debate, but now she only agreed to 1. So she's scared, pretty much. Trump should stick to the original debate rules, and anything else is just a joke. They're trying to play Trump right now, but we all know he's too sharp for that. Like Trump is kind of sharp, he's gonna go on X or on Truth in order to get out his opinion be heard. I want to hear what you think about this. Drop your thought in the comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. And don't forget to like and share and subscribe for more content like this. Let's keep it rolling.
Instead, why do you think they're doing it together and not by herself?
Well, I don't think it's a secret. Democrats over the last couple years have increasingly thought that they can go directly to their voters, and I think have frankly been fairly slow to coming around to doing mainstream traditional interviews. We've heard the Biden campaign, now turned the Harris campaign, complain repeatedly about reporters trying to ask those type of questions, have stayed away from more traditional media interviews as they've tried to go to influencers, tried to go to podcasts that are more friendly venues for them, and they found real success with that. I think what is happening now, though, is there's an onus on Harris and Walz to differentiate themselves from the Biden ticket. There's open questions about what their vision would be, what their legislative priorities would be. And while the Democratic convention was an advertisement for the party writ large, a lot of the things people were saying on stage could have been just the same if it was President Biden as the nominee rather than Kamala Harris. What an interview does is put the onus on her, not just for the mastery of issues and kind of command of issues, but to lay out a vision. That is something that Kamala Harris has been fairly uncomfortable with. Speaking as someone who has interviewed her, that's not necessarily where she likes to be. She often says, I'm not someone who's good at speeches. I'm someone who gets things done. Now, we know as president, that's a big core part of the job is to lay out that kind of vision.
Obviously, when you have a two-person interview, and you have a limited amount of time, it does limit the interviewer's ability.
I don't think this is going to be the last we hear of her, though. This is going to be the first, but I do think that question of can she do it alone will loom, and they will have to be able to put her out in spaces where she is answering confrontational questions and laying out her vision by herself. If this is all we get in terms of her along with Walz, I do think those questions will ring out further.
Scott, in terms of the debate, do you think Trump had gone out, though people in his campaign were apparently saying they want the mics muted. He, the other day, yesterday, I think it was, said, he'd be fine. He'd prefer it if the mics weren't muted. But, he talked about the rules of the rules. Should the mics be muted if you're a Trump supporter?
Look, I think all this is sort of tedious baloney. And it's just, no one's going to care about this. And
that's what people said about the first debate, and
no,
it became pretty monumental.
Well,
so.
but it wasn't the rules that caused Joe Biden to malfunction and destroy his career on live television. I mean, I think it's fine if they're muted. I think it's fine if they're not. But based on our reporting, I can't tell what's been agreed to or not. Trump seems to think we're having the same rules, but it doesn't matter because they both have to do something. He has to really get her floundering around on flip-flops and her record with Biden. She has to stand up to a test, right? I mean, people expect their presidential candidates to be tested. They both have reason to be there. I think the rules are secondary. And I'm with Trump. I'll just say, if I were him, I would say the same thing. I don't care. Turn them on, turn them off. I'll be ready.
Maria, what do you think?
I think that it's smart of the Harris campaign to try to push for unmuted mics because we know that every time that Donald Trump speaks, he lies. And if the moderators are not going to be fact checkers, because that would be a gargantuan feat because of exactly that, then I think that the vice president should be free to be able to fact check on the spot. And also, we also know that this is an opportunity, if the mics are unmuted, that Donald Trump is going to become unhinged. He's going to become Donald Trump. He doesn't know how to confront somebody like Kamala Harris, a strong, competent woman, a woman of color, a daughter of immigrants, everything that Donald Trump has sought to demean and degrade. When he is on the stage with her, I think that he's not going to know how to confront that, and that is going to come out if the mics are unmuted. And again, if he blurts something out, if he tries to interrupt her, then she's going to have the ability to fight back, essentially. And so I think it's smart for them to push it. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't become something that is, mics are unmuted, that's fine too. I think that she's going to demonstrate that she's the prosecutor and he's the 34 times convicted felon.
No one knows how they're going to respond. I mean, in a debate where the pressure is just so incredibly intense on that stage, whether there's an audience or not, no one really knows how you're going to respond in real time when someone is, constantly sniping or inserting things, and trying to get at you. She might respond great. It might bring out some fire in her, or it might also, it might totally derail her. I mean, as it would with anybody.
Yeah, I do think we have not seen her in this setting. We haven't seen her up against Donald Trump. But you got to remember, for a lot of Democrats, they have been salivating at the idea of Kamala Harris across the stage from Donald Trump all the way back since 2019. There is understandably high expectations for her coming into this, partially because they're pitching her as someone who can prosecute the case against Donald Trump, as the perfect foil for someone like him. So I do think that there will be a sense of pressure on her coming in, not just to show a command of issues or defend the administration's record, but to lay out the case that a lot of Democrats have wanted someone like her to take to him directly. And so I frankly heard a couple Harris people at the DNC say they're worried the expectations are too high for her coming in. But I don't think that's something that can really hold water, because what we are hearing from them as the reason of why she's best suited is exactly for reasons on that debate stage. So I think that that's something that she has to come in and actualize.
Although I will say those rules of like a 2-minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, it does limit the ability to go back and forth with each other in a long thing, sort of that in which
they want those interactions. Remember her on the Senate hearing stage? She likes those confrontational spaces. I've had some of those with her. She frankly enjoys some of
Which is why the rules do matter, because it can really limit that or it can
100%.
encourage that. Everybody stick around.